that I was talking about, and it's got a long louisville.edu/speed/faculty and all that. But once you go there to the book site, you'll actually be able to download a whole bunch of things. Obviously, if you're using my textbook with the corresponding PowerPoint files, which you're welcome to use regardless. And the first two, I think, are all related. Well, the first three are related to my book, but the others are all software. And in fact, I have links to Keith John's website through mine, plus several others. So not just software that I've developed or my students have developed, but many others. And you might, some interesting things here that my students seem to like: the traveling salesman problem software. There's one for layout, for single board, and the two that I'm going to talk about today: 10 principles of materials handling and analysis and design of integrated material handling systems. Those two are downloadable. Of course, these are large files, so I would not recommend a dial-up for this sort of a download. And again, there are lots of other things. KickMe has developed AGV, DST, and then XASRS. And the last one is the one that Keith John actually pointed out to his website. And then there's also this solution manual request, which is only for instructors, but I often get some students trying to sneak in as instructors and trying to get a copy of the solutions manual. Okay, so that's that. When we started this project, I guess our basic objective was to integrate modeling skills and knowledge of material handling technology into basically two modules that are sort of self-paced, and they're designed so people, you could give this when you're out of town, give it to the students, get them started, maybe have a TA help the students out to just do the initial startup, and then walk away from there. It's a self-paced self-learning tool. Both of them are the 10 principles and the warehouse design, and again, I'll do a quick demo of both of those. And our target was actually two sets of audiences. At least that's what Dick Ward had wanted me to focus on. Not just the undergraduate students, juniors and seniors who are taking a facilities design or a material handling course, but also working professionals who are new to the field, who want to learn quickly about, let's say, principles of materials handling, different aspects of a warehouse, and so on. And these are all the people who are involved, and I think at any time there's at least about 30-35 people working on the project. So it actually involved faculty from computer science, from electrical engineering, from cognitive psychology, education, and so on. Obviously the software folks and the content providers, so that was primarily the faculty in industrial engineering. I think it might be at this point useful to just go directly to the 10 principles software and then come back to these slides. Okay, that's not it. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's my younger brother there.
He's the handsome one in the family.
I guess so. But if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's actually several buttons. There's music. Some people like it. Some people find it annoying. If you are in the latter category, then hit that left button and then it'll stop the music. But it also, there's a button that says the goals of producing the CD. So that's where you'll hear a 2-minute lecture from me. And after that, if you click on the navigation, it'll tell you how to actually walk through the different aspects of the CD. There are learning tools, credits, and of course, if you want to skip that intro, you can. But let me just walk you through very quickly the navigation part. How to step from one slide to the other, what the different buttons stand. So the only thing I think, the key thing that you have to remember with this CD is this inverted triangle that you see up on the left column. That's the one that will allow you to pull up the different principles directly. So I guess material in MHIA used to have about 20 principles many years ago, and then I think a bunch of people, including Leon and others, got together and said that's way too many. Let's condense them down to 10. And now we have 10 principles, and so those 10 principles are accessible by clicking on that inverted triangle. But there are also other what do you call icons there. So this question mark is obviously, it will take you to the introduction screen, which is right at the bottom, learning tools. So it will take you there and tell you how to actually go through the CD. The book icon is obviously the glossary. There's the left parentheses and right parentheses that are actually called the integrate layer. So after you make your students go through all the 10 principles, you can present them with a case study, a real-world case study. In fact, we're actually working with that particular warehouse in Pennsylvania right now. From the Defense Logistics Agency, they have one of their largest distribution centers, the Eastern EDC, Eastern Distribution Center. And I had not visited that warehouse when I wrote this up. A lot of other people had written up about it, so I actually used that information to create this case study. But what you can ask your students to do is actually go through that case study and then have them test their understanding of the 10 principles by asking them questions like, which principles have been applied, or at least which ones were obviously applied and which ones were not, kind of thing, and ask them questions about, well, what are the consequences of not applying this principle, or what are the benefits of applying some other principle, and so on. And if you want to leave the CD, then you click on that X button. And actually, so if you click on these areas, it'll tell you what each one does. So I'm going to skip the intro. There's obviously credits. Okay, learning tools. And this will again tell you that you can go from one principle to any other. And within a principle, you can start from the end, start from the middle, or any other point. And we provided a sequence, but you can actually enter it in different, from different points. Okay, so credits, skip intro. And if you just want to go step by step, you can go to the bottom and say, click on previous or next. What I'm going to do is, since I've used this a number of times, click on, okay, so this is where, let me back up a little bit. So you click on the CD, or the upper left corner of this screen, and then you get, I don't know how well you're able to see it. It's a little bit small on my computer, but there is actually 10 principles starting with planning, standardization, work, ergonomic, unit load, space utilization, system, automation, environmental, and life cycle. So those are the 10 principles that were developed by MHIA. And I'm just going to go to one of the principles called space utilization. And when you click on that, it takes you so there is a lot of animation, videos, voiceovers, music. So this is actually rich in content in terms of all of these aspects that I mentioned. But if, again, like I said, if you don't want the music, then just click on goes away. So each principle is actually explained via 4 layers, as we call them. Discover is where a student who's new to this field will discover that there is such a thing called space utilization principle. And it's hard. Some of them, like planning and systems, are probably not too new for the students, but work, unit load, and things like that might be. So this is where they actually discover that there is such a thing called space utilization principle. And all we do in this particular layer is to just give them the definition. One more.
Effective and efficient use must be made of all available space.
And then after that,
picture to view the animation. Watch what is happening to the storage racks on the warehouse floor.
I don't know if you're able to hear her in the back, but all we want the student to be able to do is just open up this animation and just watch what is happening. What do you notice? What stands out, kind of thing. And again, there are lots of different icons that you can click on. So for example, this hyperlink text, because this is the first time that you're seeing the terminology floating aisle, If you click on it, it'll actually take you to the glossary, to that particular section of the glossary where floating isle is explained. There's also a pencil icon. If you click on that, it'll open up a notepad where you can actually write, enter text and make notes. And in fact, I use that to ask my students specific questions. In fact, some specific questions are built into the CD, and you can simply ask them to answer those questions, which in the end, when they're done, they'll be prompted to save onto a disk or a thumb drive. Nobody uses disk, right? So a thumb drive, and you'll be able to do that. So let me just click on the animation and maybe ask you a question at the end. What I typically ask my students: what do you notice? What stands out?
Happening to the storage racks on the warehouse floor.
And I tell them, whatever idea pops in your head, just come out with it. And they actually come back and say, well, let's see. Let me throw that question at you after you've seen the audio here. Anything that stood out?
Lift truck had to wait.
Lift truck had to wait, right? The first thing the students say is, oh, I didn't know that these shells can be moved. Okay, so you have and then I say, okay, so what's the advantage of that? It's like better space utilization. But all this pros and cons. You decide to put in floating, movable racks. Then the disadvantage is what Jim just mentioned, which is takes more time to access something that is sitting in the middle, right? Or even worse, at the end. So then I asked them to think about where do you think such a storage rack might be useful, and give them clues on, well, what about food freezer facilities where you need to refrigerate, refrigeration costs a lot of money, so you need to find an efficient way of maximizing space utilization. So just ask them to think about, give me examples of applications where space utilization has a premium over throughput. Okay, so again, let me click on that.
Using your note box, describe in 1 or 2 sentences what you see happening in this animation. What do you notice? What stands out?
And this is where you can actually type in whatever you want, and it gets recorded. Well, you'll be able to save it at the end. So that's the discover layer.
Explore the key aspects of the principle.
And explore where...
Work areas, eliminate cluttered, unorganized spaces.
Okay, explore layer is where we actually present the key aspects of each principle. And these, again, were given to us by MHIA. These are already done by a group of, I don't know how many people, Leon, were involved in the development of that, but a bunch of you guys, long time ago, yeah. And this CD was produced a long time ago too. So but maybe about 5 years after you guys came up with the key principles. But again, most of these are for the students. I think it seems obvious, and I tell them, well, it might be obvious to you here, but when you walk into a warehouse, you'll be surprised to see, how uncommon common sense is sometimes. So anyway, you can. I'm not going to go through all of the key aspects, but maybe just take you to, this is another feature that we have. When a new concept is introduced, or even otherwise, sometimes we have different people with different perspectives, contributing to a discussion of a problem. So in this case, it's honeycombing loss, right? So you have 4 talking heads, if you will. So this is the engineer. And there's a manager there, a professor, and a student. And the engineer's perspective is to make things more efficient, make the process, do process improvements, worry about the technical stuff. The manager's viewpoint is to keep the system costs down, make sure the system is running well. The professor's is perhaps more of a theoretical discussion kind of thing. And the student sometimes asks, good probing questions. Because this product is used not just in the United States, but in a number of places. In University of Groningen, Janus Lomp used to use it, but many other places. So we try to keep different accents, and that was done deliberately, not that